Close your eyes for a moment. Feel yourself settling into this space, this moment where transformation begins. Take a deep breath and let yourself arrive fully here, because what we're about to explore together isn't just another conversation about money or success. This is an invitation into the deepest mysteries of creation itself, where your imagination becomes the architect of your reality, and your consciousness becomes the fertile ground from which abundance springs forth like water from a hidden well. You see, there's something profound happening right now, even as you listen to these words. Your mind, that extraordinary creative instrument you carry within you, is already beginning to stir. It's beginning to recognize something it has always known but perhaps forgotten in the noise and chaos of everyday existence. You are not merely an observer of reality, you are its very creator. Every thought you think, every feeling you feel, every image you hold in your mind's eye, is a seed planted in the infinite field of possibility that surrounds you always. But let me ask you something, and I want you to really feel into this question. When you think about wealth, when you think about abundance, what happens in your body? Do you feel a tightening in your chest? Does your stomach clench with anxiety? Do you hear that familiar voice whispering that abundance is for other people, that you weren't born under the right stars, that you don't have what it takes? Or perhaps you feel nothing at all, a hollow emptiness where excitement should live, a resignation that has become so comfortable you've mistaken it for wisdom. If any of these ring true, I want you to know that you're not broken, you're not cursed, you're not destined for struggle. What you're experiencing is simply the natural result of years, perhaps decades, of mental conditioning. You've been programmed by a world that believes in scarcity, that teaches limitation as if it were gospel, that treats abundance as a finite resource that must be hoarded and fought over. But this programming, no matter how deep it runs, is not your truth. It never was. The truth is that you were born from abundance itself. The very atoms that make up your body were forged in the hearts of ancient stars, scattered across the cosmos, and brought together through an incomprehensible series of cosmic events to create the miracle that is you. The intelligence that beats your heart without your conscious effort, that heals your wounds while you sleep, that coordinates the trillions of cells in your body in perfect harmony. This same intelligence is the source of all creation, all abundance, all wealth, and it lives within you. This is what Neville Goddard understood so deeply, what he spent his life teaching and demonstrating. He knew that imagination is not just fantasy or wishful thinking, but the very creative power of the universe expressing itself through human consciousness. He knew that when you truly grasp this principle, when you really understand that your inner world creates your outer world, everything changes. Not gradually, not eventually, but immediately and completely. Picture this scene with me. It's a quiet Sunday morning, and you're standing at your bedroom window, looking out at a world that seems to stretch endlessly before you. The morning light is soft and golden, casting everything in a warm glow that makes even the ordinary seem magical. But here's what's different about this morning. You're not the same person you were yesterday. Something has shifted within you, something fundamental and irreversible. You can feel it in the way you breathe, deeper and more relaxed than you have in years. You can see it in the way you hold yourself, with a quiet confidence that seems to radiate from your very core. As you stand there, you realize that the anxiety that used to greet you every morning is gone. That familiar knot in your stomach that would form when you thought about bills, about your bank account, about whether you'd have enough, it's simply not there anymore. In its place is something you almost don't recognize at first: peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from having solved all your problems, but the kind that comes from knowing, absolutely knowing, that you are the creator of your experience. You walk over to your desk and open your laptop, and there on the screen is your bank account. The numbers you see there don't send you into panic or depression. Instead, they represent merely one moment in time, one frame in the motion picture of your life that you are directing with increasing skill and confidence. You see these numbers, and you smile because you know they are about to change. Not because you hope they will, not because you're going to work harder or hustle more, but because you have already changed them in the one place that truly matters, in your imagination, in your consciousness, in the quantum field of infinite possibility where all creation begins. This is not fantasy. This is not positive thinking or wishful dreaming. This is the recognition of a fundamental truth that mystics and sages have known for millennia. Consciousness is the only reality. Everything else, your bank account, your job, your circumstances, even your body, these are simply projections of your inner state, crystallizations of your dominant mental and emotional patterns. But let me take you deeper into this understanding, because intellectual knowledge alone will not transform your life. You must feel this truth, embody it, live it from the inside out. Imagine for a moment that you are a director creating a film. You have unlimited resources, unlimited possibilities, unlimited creative power. The story you're telling is the story of your life, and right now, we're going to rewrite the script. In the old script, you were the victim of circumstances, always reacting to what life threw at you, always struggling to make ends meet, always worried about having enough. In that old story, abundance was something outside of you, something you had to chase, something you had to deserve, something that might come to you if you were lucky, or if you worked hard enough, or if the stars aligned just right. But that story was based on a lie, the lie of separation, the lie that you are separate from the creative power of the universe. In the new script, you are the conscious creator of your experience. In this story, abundance is not something you chase, but something you are. It's not something you attract from outside yourself, but something you express from within yourself. In this new story, your imagination is not a plaything, but a creative instrument of unlimited power. Your thoughts are not random mental chatter, but deliberate acts of creation. Your feelings are not reactions to circumstances, but the very substance from which circumstances are formed. Can you feel the difference? Can you sense how this shift in understanding changes everything? When you truly grasp that you are not a beggar at the feast of life, but the one who sets the table, when you realize that you are not a victim of economic forces, but a conscious participant in the eternal dance of creation, something magnificent begins to unfold. Let me tell you about Sarah, a composite of many people I've worked with over the years. Sarah came to these teachings drowning in debt, working 2 jobs just to keep her head above water, convinced that she was destined for struggle because that's all she had ever known. Her family was poor, her parents fought about money constantly, and she had inherited not just their genes but their beliefs about scarcity and limitation. She carried these beliefs like invisible chains, and they shaped every decision she made, every opportunity she saw or didn't see, every relationship she entered or avoided. But then Sarah discovered something that changed everything. She learned that her current circumstances were not her fault, but they were her responsibility. She learned that she didn't create her past, but she could absolutely create her future. Most importantly, she learned that the creative power she had been unconsciously using to maintain her struggle was the same power she could consciously use to create abundance. The transformation didn't happen overnight, but it began immediately. Sarah started by changing the movie that played in her mind. Instead of rehearsing her problems, she began to rehearse her solutions. Instead of feeling into poverty, she began to feel into wealth. Instead of seeing herself as a victim of circumstances, she began to see herself as the author of her story. Every morning, before the world could tell her who she was supposed to be, Sarah would spend time in her imagination, living from the end of her desire fulfilled. She would see herself opening bank statements with joy instead of dread. She would feel the satisfaction of being able to say yes when her children asked for something they wanted. She would experience the peace that comes from knowing that she always has more than enough. And she didn't just visualize these things, she inhabited them, embodied them, became them in her consciousness. The remarkable thing about Sarah's story is not just that her outer circumstances began to change, though they did, dramatically, and in ways she never could have predicted. The remarkable thing is how quickly her inner world transformed. Within weeks, she noticed that she walked differently, spoke differently, made decisions from a completely different place within herself. The anxiety that had been her constant companion began to fade. The sense of urgency and desperation that had driven her every action was replaced by a calm confidence that felt almost supernatural. And then the miracles began. Not miracles in the sense of supernatural interventions, but miracles in the sense of natural outcomes flowing from a changed consciousness. Opportunities that had been invisible became obvious. Resources that had seemed impossible to access suddenly appeared. People who could help her showed up in her experience as if drawn by some invisible magnetism. Her creativity exploded, and ideas for generating income seemed to flow from an inexhaustible well of inspiration. Within 6 months, Sarah had not only eliminated her debt, but had begun building real wealth. But more importantly, she had discovered something infinitely more valuable than money. She had discovered her own creative power. She had learned that abundance is not something that happens to you, but something you become. She had awakened to the truth that wealth is not primarily about money, but about a way of being, a state of consciousness, a recognition of the infinite supply that exists within you always. This is what I want you to understand as we journey together through these teachings. Your external circumstances right now, whatever they may be, are simply a reflection of your past thinking, your past feeling, your past imagining. They are not a verdict on your worth or your potential. They are not a prediction of your future. They are simply the harvested crop of seeds you planted unconsciously, perhaps before you even knew you were planting anything at all. But here's the beautiful truth. You can plant new seeds right now. In fact, you are planting new seeds with every thought you think, every feeling you feel, every scene you imagine. The question is not whether you are creating your reality. You are always creating your reality. The question is whether you are creating consciously or unconsciously, deliberately or by default, from love or from fear, from abundance or from lack. As we go deeper into this understanding, I want you to begin to feel into the reality of your own creative power, not as an intellectual concept, but as a lived experience. Right now, as you listen to these words, your imagination is active. You are creating images, feelings, sensations. You are experiencing something that doesn't exist in the physical world, but is utterly real to you in this moment. This is not different from the process by which all of physical reality is created. The only difference is the degree of vividness, the intensity of feeling, the persistence of assumption. Let me guide you through an experience that will help you taste this power for yourself. I want you to close your eyes and imagine that you are in your ideal home. This might be a home you've never seen, or it might be one you've driven past 1,000 times, dreaming. Either way, I want you to see yourself walking through the front door of this home, and I want you to know, absolutely know, that this home belongs to you. You're not visiting, you're not dreaming, you're not pretending. You are home. Feel your feet on the floors. Are they hardwood, marble, soft carpet? Run your hands along the walls. Feel the texture, the temperature. Look around at the rooms, spacious and filled with beautiful things that reflect your taste, your values, your dreams made manifest. Walk to the window and look out at the view that is yours to enjoy every day. Feel the satisfaction, the gratitude, the sense of having arrived not just at a place but at a state of being where your desires are naturally and effortlessly fulfilled. Now, and this is crucial, I want you to feel how it feels to be the person who owns this home. How do you carry yourself? How do you breathe? What kind of thoughts occupy your mind? What is your relationship to money when you are living in abundance rather than chasing it? Feel into the confidence, the peace, the freedom that comes from knowing that you always have enough, that you are always provided for, that the universe is constantly conspiring to support and bless you. This feeling, this state of being, this is what Neville called the feeling of the wish fulfilled. It's not hope, it's not desire, it's not wishful thinking. It's the actual experience of having what you want, lived fully in your imagination with such vividness and conviction that it becomes more real to you than your current circumstances. And here's what most people don't understand about this process. When you can sustain this feeling, when you can live from this place consistently, your outer world has no choice but to conform to this inner reality. It's not magic, it's law. It's the same law by which your current circumstances came to be, except now you're working with it consciously instead of against it unconsciously. But let me address something I know you might be thinking. You might be wondering, if this is true, if it's really this simple, why isn't everyone wealthy? Why is there so much struggle and suffering in the world? These are fair questions, and they deserve honest answers. The truth is that most people are creating their reality unconsciously. They are focused on what they don't want rather than what they do want. They are feeling into their problems rather than their solutions. They are rehearsing their fears rather than their dreams. They are living from their past rather than from their future. And all of this unconscious creation is just as powerful as conscious creation. It's just creating things they don't actually want. Most people have been conditioned to believe that they are victims of circumstances, that wealth is limited, that you have to work hard to deserve abundance, that money is the root of evil, that rich people are somehow immoral or lucky or different from them. These beliefs, held unconsciously but felt deeply, create a vibrational barrier between them and the abundance they desire. They are simultaneously wanting wealth and repelling it, asking for abundance while affirming lack, dreaming of freedom while identifying with limitation. But you are different. The very fact that you are here, listening to these words, engaging with these ideas, tells me that you are ready to step out of unconscious creation and into conscious creation. You are ready to stop being a victim of circumstances and start being the author of your story. You are ready to discover that abundance is not something you earn, but something you are, not something you attract, but something you express, not something you lack, but something you have simply forgotten how to access. Let me tell you about the moment everything changed for me personally. I was sitting in my car outside a bank, having just been denied a loan for the third time. I had a business idea I was passionate about, but no capital to make it happen. I had bills piling up, credit cards maxed out, and that familiar taste of desperation in my mouth that had become as constant as breathing. I was angry at the banker, angry at the system, angry at life for being so unfair. But mostly I was angry at myself for being in this position yet again. As I sat there in my car, feeling sorry for myself and rehearsing all the reasons why I was destined to struggle, something inside me snapped. Not in a destructive way, but in a liberating way. I realized that I had been telling myself the same story for years, the story of not having enough, not being enough, not deserving enough. And this story had become so familiar, so comfortable in its misery, that I had forgotten it was just a story. I had forgotten that I was the one telling it, and that I could choose to tell a different story altogether. In that moment, sitting in my car outside that bank, I made a decision that changed everything. I decided to fire myself as the victim of my story and hire myself as the hero. I decided to stop asking why this was happening to me and start asking how I could use this experience to become who I needed to become. I decided to stop focusing on what I lacked and start focusing on what I was creating. I closed my eyes right there in my car, and I began to imagine a different scene. I imagined walking back into that same bank, not as a desperate borrower, but as a successful entrepreneur opening a new account. I imagined the banker who had just rejected me now asking how he could serve me better. I imagined myself signing papers not for a loan but for an investment, not as someone who needed help, but as someone who had value to offer. But more than the images, I focused on the feeling. I felt what it would feel like to be financially free, to have ideas and the resources to implement them, to be able to say yes to opportunities instead of always having to say no. I felt the confidence, the excitement, the sense of expansion that comes from living in alignment with your true creative power. I spent 20 minutes in that car, living in my imagination as the person I wanted to become, feeling into the reality I wanted to create. When I opened my eyes, nothing in my external circumstances had changed, but something fundamental had shifted within me. I wasn't the same person who had walked out of that bank in defeat. I was someone else entirely. Someone who knew that this temporary situation was not my final destination. What happened next still amazes me when I think about it. Within 2 days, I received a phone call from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, someone who had heard about my business idea through a mutual friend. This person not only wanted to invest in my vision, but wanted to partner with me in ways I had never even imagined. Within a month, I had not only the capital I needed, but a business partner whose expertise perfectly complemented my own. Within 6 months, we had launched successfully and were generating more income than I had ever thought possible. But here's what I want you to understand. This wasn't luck. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't even about the visualization or the positive thinking, though those were part of it. What happened was that I had fundamentally changed my relationship to myself and to reality. I had stopped seeing myself as someone who needed to convince the world to give me what I wanted and started seeing myself as someone who had something valuable to offer. I had stopped trying to get wealth from the world and started expressing wealth into the world. This shift in identity, this change in how I saw myself and my relationship to abundance, created a ripple effect that transformed everything. I started making different decisions, noticing different opportunities, attracting different people into my experience. I started showing up differently in every interaction, speaking from a different place within myself, operating from abundance rather than scarcity. And this is what I want you to begin to understand about your own life, your own relationship to wealth and abundance. The limitations you experience are not imposed on you by the world. They are not the result of your circumstances, your background, your education, or your connections. They are the result of who you believe yourself to be, what you believe you deserve, what you believe is possible for someone like you. But beliefs can be changed. Identity can be transformed. Your relationship to reality can be fundamentally altered. And when this happens, when you truly shift from the inside out, your outer world has no choice but to reflect this inner transformation. It's not magic, it's physics. It's the fundamental principle by which all of reality operates. Consciousness creates form, imagination creates reality, inner states create outer circumstances. Let me share with you one of the most powerful techniques Neville taught, something he called revision. This is not just about changing your future, but about changing your past, not in terms of what actually happened, but in terms of what those experiences mean to you and how they influence your present moment creation. Think about a memory you have related to money or abundance, a time when you felt lack or limitation or embarrassment about your financial situation. Maybe it was being denied something you wanted as a child because your family couldn't afford it. Maybe it was a time when you couldn't pay a bill or had to borrow money or felt ashamed about your financial situation. Whatever memory comes to mind, I want you to hold it gently, without judgment, recognizing that this experience, painful as it may have been, was not a statement about your worth or your destiny. Now I want you to revise this memory. I want you to imagine that scene unfolding differently. See yourself in that situation, but this time, see yourself having everything you need. If it was about not being able to afford something you wanted, see your parents easily and joyfully providing it. If it was about being embarrassed about money, see yourself confident and secure. If it was about lack, see yourself surrounded by abundance. But don't just change the external circumstances. Change how you feel in that moment. Feel the security, the confidence, the sense of being provided for and cared for by life itself. Feel what it's like to be someone who always has enough, who is always supported, who lives in a friendly universe that is constantly seeking to bless and provide for you. Do this with feeling, with conviction, with the same emotional intensity that the original memory carried. See this revised scene over and over until it becomes more vivid and real to you than the original memory. This is not about denying what happened or pretending the past was different. This is about changing the meaning of what happened, transforming a story of limitation into a story of abundance, healing the wounds that have been unconsciously creating your current reality. When you do this work consistently, something remarkable happens. You begin to free yourself from the limiting patterns of the past. You begin to operate from a different place within yourself, a place where abundance is natural, where wealth is expected, where prosperity is simply who you are, rather than something you're trying to become. And as this inner transformation deepens, you'll begin to notice changes in your outer experience. Opportunities will appear that weren't there before. People will respond to you differently. Your own actions and decisions will come from a different place, creating different results. Resources will become available to you in ways that seem almost miraculous, but are actually the natural result of your changed consciousness. This is how Sarah's transformation unfolded, how my own transformation unfolded, how countless others have moved from lack to abundance by applying these principles. It's not about positive thinking or wishful dreaming or trying to manipulate reality from the outside. It's about recognizing that you are the reality. You are the consciousness from which all your experiences arise. You are the creative power that has been unconsciously creating limitation and can now consciously create abundance. But let me address another question I know you might have. What about action? Doesn't this mean I just sit around visualizing and wait for money to fall from the sky? This misunderstanding has caused many people to dismiss these teachings as impractical or naive, but nothing could be further from the truth. When you truly understand that consciousness creates reality, when you really embody the feeling of the wish fulfilled, when you genuinely identify yourself as someone who is abundant, you will be moved to take action. But these actions will be different from the desperate, driven actions of someone trying to force their way to success. These will be inspired actions, intuitive actions, actions that flow naturally from your changed state of being. You'll find yourself drawn to opportunities you never noticed before. You'll have ideas that seem to come from nowhere, but are actually arising from the infinite creative intelligence that is your true nature. You'll meet people who can help you in ways you never could have planned or predicted. You'll make decisions that, from your old consciousness, might have seemed risky or impossible, but from your new consciousness feel obvious and natural. The key is that the action becomes the effect of your changed consciousness, not the cause of your desired outcome. You don't take action to get wealthy. You take action because you are wealthy. You don't work to create abundance. You work from abundance. You don't strive to become successful. You operate as someone who is already successful and is simply expressing that success in the world. This might sound like a subtle distinction, but it makes all the difference in the world. When you take action from lack, from fear, from desperation, you create more lack, more fear, more desperation. When you take action from abundance, from confidence, from the knowing that you are already provided for, you create more abundance, more confidence, more evidence of your prosperity. Let me paint you a picture of what this looks like in practical terms. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning, and instead of the first thought being worry about your bills or your bank account or whether you're going to have enough this month, your first thought is gratitude for the abundance that surrounds you. You look around your bedroom, and instead of seeing what you lack, you see what you have. Instead of feeling anxious about the day ahead, you feel excited about the opportunities it will bring. You get dressed, and you choose your clothes not from scarcity, not thinking about how old they are or how you can't afford better ones, but from abundance, appreciating the beauty and functionality of what you have. You look in the mirror, and instead of seeing someone who is struggling financially, you see someone who is wealthy, not because of what they have in the bank, but because of who they are, because of the creative power they carry, because of their connection to the infinite source of all supply. You have breakfast, and you eat with gratitude, recognizing that the very fact that you have food is evidence of abundance, that the universe is already providing for you in countless ways. You check your phone, and instead of dreading what messages might be there, you're curious about what opportunities might have appeared overnight. As you go through your day, you interact with people differently. When someone asks how you're doing, instead of complaining about your financial situation or your struggles, you speak from abundance. You talk about your dreams, your visions, your excitement about what you're creating. You treat others with generosity, not necessarily with money, but with your time, your attention, your energy, your kindness. You operate from a place of having more than enough, and this abundance flows through you and touches everyone you encounter. When opportunities arise, instead of immediately thinking about whether you can afford them or whether you deserve them, you ask yourself whether they align with your vision, whether they feel expansive and exciting. You make decisions from possibility rather than from limitation. You say yes to things that the old you would have said no to, not recklessly, but from a deep knowing that you are supported by life itself. At the end of the day, instead of reviewing everything you didn't accomplish or couldn't afford or didn't have, you reflect on the abundance that showed up, the opportunities that appeared, the ways that life supported and provided for you. You go to sleep not worried about tomorrow but excited about it, knowing that you are co-creating your reality with the infinite intelligence that animates the universe. This is not fantasy. This is not naive optimism. This is the natural result of recognizing who you really are and aligning your consciousness with truth rather than with the illusions of limitation and scarcity. This is what happens when you stop trying to get abundance from the world and start expressing abundance into the world. This is what happens when you remember that you are not a victim of circumstances but the conscious creator of your experience. And as you live from this place consistently, day after day, week after week, month after month, something extraordinary happens. Your outer circumstances begin to shift. Not gradually, not eventually, but often dramatically, and sometimes almost immediately. Money shows up in unexpected ways. Business opportunities present themselves. Investments perform better than expected. New streams of income open up. People want to pay you for your ideas, your skills, your unique gifts and talents. But here's what's really beautiful about this transformation. The money, wonderful as it is, becomes secondary to the recognition of your own creative power. The abundance, valuable as it is, becomes less important than the awareness that you are the source of abundance. The wealth, practical as it is, becomes less significant than the understanding that you are already rich in the only way that truly matters. You are rich in consciousness, rich in creative power, rich in your connection to the infinite source of all supply. This is the deepest teaching about manifesting wealth. It's not really about the money. Money is simply energy, a symbol, a representation of value flowing through your experience. When you understand this, when you realize that money is not the source of security or happiness or freedom, but simply one of many ways that security and happiness and freedom can be expressed, you become free from the desperate need for money that actually repels it from your experience. When you can be genuinely happy and secure and free regardless of the numbers in your bank account, when you can feel abundant even when your circumstances don't yet reflect that abundance, when you can operate from wealth even when you don't yet have wealth, that's when wealth flows to you effortlessly and naturally. It's one of the great paradoxes of creation. You receive what you no longer need, you attract what you no longer chase, you manifest what you have already become in consciousness. Let me share with you the story of Marcus, another person whose life was transformed by understanding these principles. Marcus was a talented musician who had been struggling for years to make a living from his art. He loved music, he was gifted at it, but he had somehow convinced himself that there was no money in music, that artists were destined to struggle, that you had to choose between following your passion and making a good living. This belief created a constant internal conflict. Part of him wanted to pursue music full time, but another part of him was terrified of being broke. He would take day jobs to pay the bills, but then resent the time they took away from his music. He would play gigs when he could, but always felt like he was begging for scraps, grateful for whatever small amount venue owners were willing to pay him. Marcus lived in a constant state of anxiety about money, and this anxiety was unconsciously creating the very circumstances he feared. His desperation was palpable when he performed, and audiences could feel it. His scarcity thinking led him to undervalue his work and accept whatever was offered to him. His belief that there was no money in music caused him to dismiss opportunities that could have been lucrative because they didn't fit his limited vision of what a struggling artist should do. But then Marcus discovered these teachings, and everything changed. He realized that his struggle was not because music doesn't pay well, but because he had been approaching music from poverty consciousness instead of abundance consciousness. He had been trying to get money from music instead of expressing his abundance through music. He had been identifying himself as a struggling artist instead of a successful creator. Marcus began to change his relationship to his art and to money. Instead of seeing them as opposed to each other, he began to see them as natural partners. Instead of believing that following his passion meant sacrificing financial success, he began to understand that his passion was actually the key to his financial success. Instead of seeing himself as someone begging for opportunities, he began to see himself as someone with immense value to offer the world. The shift began in his imagination. Every morning, Marcus would spend time seeing himself performing for audiences who loved his music, receiving standing ovations, selling out venues, collaborating with other successful musicians. But more than just visualizing external success, he would feel into what it felt like to be someone whose art was valued, appreciated, and well compensated. He would experience the satisfaction of making a great living doing what he loved, the joy of being able to say yes when opportunities arose, the peace of knowing that his creativity was an asset, not a liability. But Marcus also did something else that was crucial. He began to revise his beliefs about money and art. He studied successful musicians and artists who were making great livings from their creativity. He began to see that the starving artist archetype was not a noble truth, but a limiting belief. He realized that the world was full of people who wanted to be inspired, entertained, and moved by art, and that they were willing to pay well for experiences that touched their hearts and souls. As Marcus's consciousness shifted, so did his approach to his music career. Instead of taking whatever gigs he could get, he began to be more selective, choosing opportunities that aligned with his vision and valued his contributions appropriately. Instead of underselling himself, He began to charge what he was worth and communicate his value confidently. Instead of hoping that someone would discover him, he began to actively create opportunities and partnerships. The results were remarkable. Within 6 months, Marcus was making more money from music than he ever had before. He had attracted a manager who believed in his vision and helped him book better venues and negotiate better deals. He had connected with other successful artists who invited him to collaborate on lucrative projects. He had begun teaching music workshops that not only generated significant income, but also established him as an authority in his field. But perhaps most importantly, Marcus had discovered something that no amount of money could buy: the joy of living in alignment with his true nature, the satisfaction of expressing his gifts fully in the world, the peace that comes from knowing that you can make a great living doing what you love. He had learned that abundance is not about choosing between passion and profit, but about expressing your passion so fully and confidently that profit naturally follows. This is what I want you to understand about your own relationship to work and money. Whatever your gifts, whatever your talents, whatever your passions, they are not obstacles to wealth, they are pathways to wealth. The thing that you love to do, the thing that comes naturally to you, the thing that you would do even if no one paid you for it, this is not separate from your financial success. This is the key to your financial success. The world needs what you have to offer. The world is waiting for you to step fully into your gifts and share them generously and confidently. The world wants to pay you well for the value you create, the problems you solve, the beauty you bring, the service you provide. But you have to believe this first. You have to see yourself as valuable, as worthy, as someone who deserves to be well compensated for their contributions. This might mean letting go of old stories about money being evil or spiritual people not caring about wealth or good work being its own reward. These beliefs, however well-intentioned, create an internal conflict that sabotages your success. You cannot simultaneously believe that money is bad and expect to attract it. You cannot hold the belief that spirituality and wealth are incompatible and expect to manifest both. You cannot think that you're being noble by undercharging for your services and wonder why you're struggling financially. The truth is that money is simply energy, and like all energy, it flows toward value. When you provide genuine value to the world, when you solve real problems, when you create beauty or inspiration or transformation, money naturally flows toward you. Not because you're chasing it, not because you're greedy or materialistic, but because value exchange is one of the fundamental principles by which the universe operates. But here's where most people get stuck. They try to create value from scarcity consciousness instead of abundance consciousness. They try to give to get rather than giving from fullness. They try to solve problems from the same level of consciousness that created the problems. They try to create wealth while simultaneously believing that wealth is wrong, or that they don't deserve it, or that it's impossible for someone like them. This internal contradiction creates resistance in the flow of abundance. It's like trying to drive a car with one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake. You might move forward eventually, but it's going to be slow, difficult, and frustrating. But when you remove the brake, when you align all parts of yourself with the desire for abundance, when you give yourself full permission to be wealthy, everything becomes effortless. Let me guide you through a process that will help you identify and release some of these internal brakes. Close your eyes and think about having $1 million in your bank account. Not as a fantasy, but as a real possibility. Feel into what comes up for you. Do you feel excited? Do you feel worthy? Do you feel like this is something that could actually happen for you? Or do you feel fear, unworthiness, guilt, or the sense that this is impossible for someone like you? Whatever comes up, just notice it without judgment. These feelings and beliefs are not your truth. They are simply programming that you inherited from your family, your culture, your past experiences. They are not permanent, they are not unchangeable, and they are certainly not a reflection of what's actually possible for you. Now I want you to imagine that you inherited these beliefs about money from someone else, someone who loved you but didn't understand the true nature of abundance. Perhaps it was a parent who grew up during the Depression and developed deep fears about scarcity. Perhaps it was a religious upbringing that taught you that money was somehow incompatible with spirituality. Perhaps it was a cultural message that told you that people like you don't get to be wealthy, that wealth is for other people, that you should be grateful for whatever you can get. Whatever the source of these limiting beliefs, I want you to recognize that they were never yours to begin with. They were handed to you by people who were operating from their own fears, their own limitations, their own unconscious programming. And just as these beliefs were given to you, you can choose to give them back. You can thank them for trying to protect you, and then you can release them with love, knowing that they no longer serve the person you are becoming. In their place, I want you to install new beliefs, beliefs that align with your true nature as a creative being, beliefs that support your highest good and your greatest potential. Feel into these new beliefs. I am inherently worthy of abundance. Money flows to me easily and effortlessly. I create value in the world, and I am well compensated for that value. I deserve to live in financial freedom. The universe wants to support me and bless me. I am a channel for prosperity to flow into the world. Don't just think these thoughts, feel them. Let them sink into your body, your nervous system, your cellular memory. Breathe them in like oxygen. Let them become as natural to you as breathing. This is not about convincing yourself of something that isn't true. This is about remembering something that has always been true, but that you temporarily forgot. As you do this work, as you release the old programming and install new beliefs, you might notice that your relationship to money begins to change in subtle but profound ways. You might find that you're less anxious about financial matters, not because your circumstances have dramatically improved overnight, but because you're operating from a different place within yourself. You might notice that you make different choices, speak differently about money, carry yourself with more confidence and self-worth. These internal shifts, subtle as they may seem, are actually the most important part of the manifestation process. They are the foundation upon which all external change is built. When you truly believe that you are worthy of abundance, you begin to act like someone who is worthy of abundance. When you genuinely expect prosperity, you begin to make decisions that create prosperity. When you authentically feel wealthy, you begin to operate in ways that generate wealth. Let me tell you about the day I truly understood this principle at a visceral level. I was at a coffee shop waiting in line behind a woman who was obviously struggling financially. Her card was declined and she began digging through her purse, counting coins, clearly embarrassed and stressed. The barista was patient but clearly frustrated, and the people behind us in line were getting impatient. In the past, I would have watched this scene with sympathy but also with a kind of identification. I would have thought, there but for the grace of God go I, recognizing myself in her struggle, relating to her embarrassment because I had been there so many times myself. But on this particular day, something different happened. Instead of relating to her lack, I felt moved to address it. Without thinking about it, without making a big show of it, I stepped forward and handed the barista my card. "I'll take care of it," I said simply. The woman turned to me with surprise and gratitude, and I could see that this small gesture had shifted something for her, had reminded her that she lived in a universe where unexpected kindness and support could appear at any moment. But what struck me most about this experience was not the good deed itself, but what it revealed about my own consciousness. A year earlier, I wouldn't have had the money to pay for someone else's coffee without worrying about my own budget. More importantly, even if I had had the money, I wouldn't have had the consciousness to act from abundance rather than from scarcity. I would have been too focused on my own lack to address someone else's. The fact that I could act spontaneously from generosity, that I could see someone in need and respond from overflow rather than from fear, that I could trust that there was enough for all of us, this told me that something fundamental had shifted within me. I had become in consciousness the kind of person who has more than enough. And because I had become this in consciousness, my external world was beginning to reflect this internal reality. This is what Neville meant when he said, "Be it now." He wasn't talking about pretending or positive thinking or fake it till you make it. He was talking about actually becoming in consciousness the person who already has what you desire. When you can genuinely be generous because you feel abundant, when you can genuinely be confident because you know your worth, when you can genuinely be peaceful because you trust in your provision, then you are no longer trying to manifest abundance. You are abundance manifesting itself through you. And this is when the magic really begins to happen. When you stop trying to get wealth and start being wealth. When you stop chasing abundance and start expressing abundance. When you stop hoping for prosperity and start embodying prosperity, the entire universe begins to reorganize itself around your new state of being. Opportunities that were invisible become obvious. People who can help you show up in your experience. Ideas that can generate income begin to flow through you like water from an artesian well. Resources that seemed scarce become abundant. What seemed impossible begins to feel inevitable. Not because you're forcing anything to happen, but because you've aligned yourself with the natural flow of abundance that is always moving through the universe, always seeking expression through willing channels. This is the secret that wealthy people know, often unconsciously. It's not that they work harder or are smarter or luckier than other people. It's that they have a different relationship to wealth. They expect it. They feel worthy of it. They operate from it rather than toward it. They don't see money as scarce but as abundant. They don't see wealth as something that belongs to other people, but as something that belongs to them. They don't see prosperity as a destination but as their natural state. And you can develop this same relationship to wealth, regardless of your current circumstances, regardless of your background, regardless of what has happened in your past. You can begin right now to cultivate the consciousness of abundance, to feel into the reality of your own prosperity, to operate from wealth rather than from lack. You can begin to see yourself not as someone who needs to acquire wealth, but as someone who is wealth, someone through whom the infinite abundance of the universe can flow into manifestation. But let me address something that might be coming up for you as we dive deeper into these teachings. You might be thinking, this sounds great in theory, but what about practical matters? What about my bills that are due next week? What about my debt? What about the fact that I need money now, not months or years from now while I'm working on my consciousness? These are completely understandable concerns, and I want to address them directly because they represent one of the biggest obstacles people face when they begin this work. The urgency of your current circumstances can make it very difficult to cultivate the patient, trusting, abundant state of consciousness that is required for manifestation. Here's what I want you to understand. Working on your consciousness is not separate from addressing your practical needs. It's the most practical thing you can do. Every moment you spend in anxiety about your circumstances is a moment you spend creating more circumstances to be anxious about. Every moment you spend focused on lack is a moment you spend magnetizing more lack into your experience. Every moment you spend operating from scarcity is a moment you spend pushing abundance away from you. This doesn't mean you ignore practical matters or avoid taking action to address your needs. It means you address your needs from abundance consciousness rather than from scarcity consciousness. It means you take care of business from a place of trust and confidence rather than from a place of fear and desperation. It means you handle your current circumstances while simultaneously creating new circumstances through your changed state of being. Let me give you some practical ways to do this. When you pay bills, instead of focusing on how much money is leaving your account, focus on gratitude for the services you received and the circulation of abundance in your life. When you look at your bank balance, instead of focusing on what's not there, appreciate what is there and see it as seed money for greater abundance. When you think about your debt, instead of seeing it as a burden, see it as temporary and already in the process of being resolved. Most importantly, when you take action to improve your financial situation, whether that's looking for a new job, starting a side business, seeking additional income, or whatever else you need to do, take these actions from abundance rather than from desperation. Make these moves from confidence rather than from fear. Approach opportunities from the assumption that you have value to offer rather than from the assumption that you need something from others. This shift in how you approach practical matters will dramatically change the results you get. When you interview for a job from desperation, employers can sense it, and it makes you less attractive as a candidate. When you approach a potential client from neediness, they can feel it, and it makes them less likely to want to work with you. When you make financial decisions from fear, you often make poor choices that create more problems down the road. But when you take the same actions from abundance consciousness, everything changes. When you interview for a job from confidence, believing that you have something valuable to offer, you become magnetic to employers. When you approach potential clients from abundance, knowing that you can solve their problems and create value for them, they're drawn to work with you. When you make financial decisions from wisdom and trust rather than from panic, you make choices that serve your long-term prosperity. Remember Sarah, whom I told you about earlier? During her transformation, she still had bills to pay and practical matters to handle. But she handled them differently than she ever had before. Instead of staying up all night worrying about money, she would spend time in her imagination, living from the reality of financial freedom. Instead of approaching potential employers from desperation, she presented herself as someone with value to offer. Instead of making financial decisions from panic, she consulted the wisdom of her future self, the one who was already financially free. This approach allowed her to take inspired action rather than desperate action. She found a new job that paid significantly more than her previous job, not because she was more qualified than other candidates, but because she carried herself differently, spoke from a different place, operated from abundance rather than from lack. She started a side business that quickly became profitable, not because she had some special knowledge or skills that others didn't have, but because she approached it from the consciousness of success rather than from the consciousness of struggle. The practical matters didn't disappear, but her relationship to them completely transformed. And because her relationship to them transformed, the outcomes transformed as well. Money that had been scarce became abundant. Opportunities that had been invisible became obvious. Solutions that had seemed impossible became inevitable. This is what can happen for you as well, starting right now. You don't have to wait until your circumstances improve to begin operating from abundance. You don't have to wait until you have more money to start feeling wealthy. You don't have to wait until your problems are solved to start living from the solution. You can begin immediately to cultivate the consciousness that will create the circumstances you desire. But there's another level to this work that we need to explore, something that goes beyond just changing your thoughts and feelings about money. There's a spiritual dimension to abundance that, when truly understood and embodied, can accelerate your manifestation in ways that seem almost miraculous. You see, abundance is not just a personal matter, it's a cosmic principle. The entire universe operates on abundance. The sun doesn't ration its light, worried that it might run out. The ocean doesn't hold back its waves, concerned about scarcity. Nature doesn't limit its creativity, afraid there won't be enough beauty to go around. Everything in the natural world operates from overflow, from generosity, from the assumption of infinite supply. You are not separate from this natural abundance. You are an expression of it, a channel through which it can flow into manifestation. When you align yourself with this cosmic principle of abundance, when you become a clear channel for prosperity to flow through you, you tap into something far greater than your personal desires or needs. You become a participant in the universe's desire to express its infinite creativity and generosity through you. This understanding changes everything about how you approach manifestation. Instead of trying to get wealth for yourself, you begin to see yourself as a steward of wealth, someone through whom abundance can flow into the world to benefit everyone it touches. Instead of hoarding resources out of fear of scarcity, you circulate them generously, knowing that the more you give, the more you receive. Instead of competing with others for limited resources, you recognize that abundance is infinite and that everyone can prosper without taking anything away from anyone else. When you operate from this level of understanding, your manifestation becomes effortless because you're no longer working against the natural flow of the universe. You're working with it. You're no longer trying to grab something that doesn't belong to you. You're accepting something that was always meant for you. You're no longer forcing outcomes through willpower. You're allowing outcomes to unfold through alignment. Let me tell you about a woman named Elena who embodies this principle beautifully. Elena started with very modest means. She was a single mother working as a waitress, struggling to make ends meet, worried constantly about providing for her children. But Elena had something that many people lack. She had a deep spiritual understanding that abundance was her birthright, that the universe wanted to support her, that prosperity was not something she had to earn, but something she could accept. Instead of focusing on what she lacked, Elena focused on what she could give. Even though she had very little money, she was incredibly generous with her time, her energy, her kindness, her service. She would help other single mothers in her building, sharing whatever resources she had. She would go out of her way to make her customers at the restaurant feel welcomed and cared for. She would volunteer at her children's school, using her limited free time to contribute to their community. This wasn't about being a martyr or giving from emptiness. Elena gave from fullness, from the recognition that she was a channel for abundance to flow through. She understood intuitively that the more she opened herself to being a blessing to others, the more blessings would flow into her own life. She lived as if she were already wealthy, not in terms of what she spent, but in terms of how generously she shared whatever she had. The transformation in Elena's life was remarkable. Within 2 years, she had been offered a management position at the restaurant, doubling her income. A customer who had been touched by her service offered to help her start her own catering business, providing both investment capital and business mentorship. The catering business thrived because Elena approached it with the same spirit of generous service that had characterized her work as a waitress. But perhaps most remarkably, Elena attracted a business partner who shared her vision of creating a company that would be profitable while also serving the community. Together, they built a catering and event planning business that not only generated significant wealth for both of them, but also created jobs for dozens of people in their community and donated a portion of its profits to local charities. Elena's success wasn't just about the money, though the money was substantial. It was about the recognition that when you align yourself with the universe's desire to express abundance, when you become a clear channel for prosperity to flow through you, when you operate from generosity rather than from scarcity, you become magnetic to opportunities, resources, and people who want to support your vision. This is the deepest secret of manifesting wealth. It's not about getting, it's about giving. It's not about accumulating, it's about circulating. It's not about hoarding, it's about sharing. When you understand this, when you really get that abundance increases when it's shared, when you recognize that prosperity is not a zero-sum game but an infinite-sum game, everything changes. You stop seeing other people's success as a threat to your own success and start seeing it as evidence of what's possible for you too. You stop hoarding opportunities and start sharing them, knowing that what you give comes back to you multiplied. You stop operating from the assumption of scarcity and start operating from the assumption of abundance, not just for yourself but for everyone. And this is when abundance begins to flow through your life like a river in spring, strong and steady and apparently inexhaustible. Money shows up in your experience not because you're grasping for it, but because you've become someone through whom money naturally flows. Opportunities present themselves not because you're desperately seeking them, but because you've become someone who naturally attracts opportunities. Resources become available to you not because you're competing for them, but because you've aligned yourself with the infinite source from which all resources come. But let me share with you perhaps the most important insight of all, something that took me years to fully understand, and that once I got it, changed everything about how I approach not just wealth but life itself. The real abundance you're seeking is not money, it's freedom. The real prosperity you want is not possessions, it's peace. The real wealth you desire is not what's in your bank account, it's what's in your consciousness. Money is wonderful, and there's nothing wrong with wanting it, enjoying it, and using it to create a beautiful life for yourself and others. But money is a means, not an end. It's a tool, not a destination. It's a symbol, not the substance. The substance is consciousness itself, your recognition of your own creative power, your understanding of your connection to the infinite source of all supply. When you truly get this, when you realize that you are already rich in the only way that ultimately matters, rich in consciousness, rich in creative power, rich in your capacity to experience joy and love and beauty and meaning, then money becomes easy. Not because money doesn't matter, but because it matters in the right proportion. It becomes a natural extension of your abundance rather than the source of your abundance. This understanding liberates you from the desperate need for money that actually repels it. It frees you from the anxiety about financial security that creates insecurity. It releases you from the belief that your worth is determined by your wealth. And ironically, this freedom from needing money is often what allows money to flow into your life most effortlessly. As we near the end of our journey together, I want you to feel into this truth. You are not poor. You have never been poor. Poverty is not your natural state. It's a temporary condition created by temporary beliefs about temporary circumstances. Your natural state is abundance, prosperity, wealth in every sense of the word. You came from abundance, you are made of abundance, and you will return to abundance. The question is not whether you deserve prosperity, you are prosperity. The question is whether you will remember this truth and align your life with it. Right now, in this moment, you have everything you need to begin living from abundance rather than from lack. You have the power of your imagination. which is the same power by which the universe creates worlds. You have the capacity to feel, which is the mechanism by which your inner state creates your outer circumstances. You have the ability to choose your thoughts, your beliefs, your assumptions about yourself and your life. And these choices, made consistently over time, will determine the reality you experience. You don't need to wait for permission to be abundant. You don't need to wait for circumstances to change before you start living from wealth consciousness. You don't need to wait for some future moment when you'll finally be ready or worthy or prepared enough. You can begin right now, in this moment, to think thoughts of abundance, to feel feelings of prosperity, to operate from the assumption that you are wealthy and that the universe is constantly seeking to support and bless you. As you go forward from this moment, carry with you the understanding that your external circumstances are not your reality. They are simply the current reflection of your past thinking and feeling. They are not permanent, they are not fixed, and they are certainly not a statement about your potential or your worth. They are simply information, feedback from the universe about where your consciousness has been. And since you can change your consciousness, you can change your circumstances. Remember that every thought you think, every feeling you feel, every image you hold in your imagination is a seed planted in the fertile soil of infinite possibility. Some of these seeds will sprout quickly, some will take longer to mature, but all of them will eventually bear fruit according to their nature. So plant seeds of abundance, seeds of prosperity, seeds of wealth and success and freedom and joy. Plant them consistently, tend them with care, water them with feeling and conviction, and trust in the harvest that is surely coming. Know that you are not alone in this process. The same intelligence that beats your heart, that grows your hair, that heals your cuts, that coordinates the trillions of cells in your body, this same intelligence is working on your behalf to manifest your desires. The same creative power that spoke the universe into existence is expressing itself through your imagination. The same love that holds the planets in their orbits is supporting your dreams and visions. You are not an accident in an indifferent universe. You are not a victim of random circumstances. You are not doomed to struggle or limitation or lack. You are a beloved expression of infinite intelligence, a unique and precious manifestation of cosmic creativity, an individualized center of the one divine consciousness that is the source and substance of all abundance. And this abundance that you are, this prosperity that you embody, this wealth that is your very nature, it cannot be taken from you, it cannot be diminished, it cannot be threatened by any external circumstance. So step into this truth, embody this reality, live from this recognition. Not someday, not when your circumstances improve, not when you feel more ready, but now, right now, in this moment. Begin to see yourself as the abundant being you truly are. Begin to feel into the prosperity that is your birthright. Begin to operate from the wealth consciousness that has been waiting patiently within you for your recognition and acceptance. The universe is ready to support you. Life is ready to bless you. Abundance is ready to flow through you. The only question remaining is, are you ready to receive it? Are you ready to step into the fullness of who you truly are? Are you ready to claim the prosperity that has always been yours? The answer to these questions will determine not just your financial future, but the entire trajectory of your life. Choose abundance, choose prosperity, choose wealth, not just as external goals to pursue, but as the truth of who you are to embody. And watch as your outer world transforms to match the inner recognition of your infinite, inexhaustible, eternal abundance. This is your invitation. This is your moment. This is your choice. The kingdom of abundance awaits your acceptance. Welcome home.